You are watching
You know,
Xirtus.
the if it's the anti-Mason party and like there's this, depiction of something that we're, you know,
Oh, is there
So,
something with that? The
so
anti-Mason party.
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
that was my question. Was Andrew Johnson was he a member of that party? It
Yeah.
was actually
So what it's interesting is the anti-Mason party was 1832, and the New Whig Party 1838. It was assimilated into the American Republicanism Party, and Andrew Johnson was a strong supporter of the anti-Masons when he first was an indentured servant and was educating himself in order to become emancipated. And so he had some major understandings about what it meant to be a serf, indentured servant, and as an American, what it meant to be a free man. And he
And so
thought that these were really important
we're
things.
talking
Plus, they
about
were
getting
Whig
$20
things.
an hour, right? Who's on the $20 bill?
Hmm.
that's no, that's
No, that's
actually
Jackson.
Jackson.
that's
Jackson.
Hamilton.
Yeah,
Well,
Jackson.
Hamilton's on 10. Hamilton's on 10 dollars.
Hamilton's on
Yeah.
10.
I
And
was
Grant,
thinking,
and so that actually is interesting because Grant is on the 50. And so Grant is, he was the general who was in charge of the genocide of the Confederacy and the Irish, and he really didn't like it. His dad was Hiram Grant, the Freemason president of the 33rd Law, blah, 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 friends with Albert Pike kind of stuff. And he drank his way through the war. And then 4 years after Johnson, or 3.5, when Johnson left office, they tried so hard to get rid of him the entire time, and they sidestepped him. Johnson's the first president to be double vetoed by Congress, and then they installed all these puppet dictatorship governments across the South with these fake leaders that weren't even. It was a complete farce. Then they put in Grant, and God, what's the other guy's name? William Brady, I want to say. Civil War. Is that right? William Brady, soldier, economist. Yeah, that's right. His plan was, let's create 5 districts to control the South. We're going to put soldiers on every corner after the war indefinitely. We'll watch them. We'll force them to go to our schools. We'll replace their police with our soldiers. We'll replace their school teachers with our teachers. We'll completely take over their infrastructure. We'll burn their money. We'll burn their books. We'll make them use ours. And that's how the South was assimilated for the next 16 years. And the entire time, Grant just drank, and he was completely unconscious for most of the time. And the Congress ran the government. And that's,
You know,
is that why so many artists hope for a federal grant now? Like, that's
interesting
Andres,
sync there. Yeah.
And so during the George Floyd riots, right? I mean, his statue was targeted too, right? Right, Ulysses Grant. What exactly was the motive of that they want to take down his statue? I mean, he wasn't a slave owner.
Yeah. Well, I think any statue of was it Grant that they were taking down statues?
It was one of them.
Was it Robert E. Lee?
It was
Robert
Yeah, both of their statues were taken down, right?
I don't think
If I
Grant's
remember
was.
I guess
correctly.
Grant was defaced, I guess.
Grant's had federal protection, and they're like, it's cool. They were working with.
He was a slave owner in that he was gifted a slave, hated the idea, and freed him within a year. But because he was a slave owner, his statue was defaced. I don't know. I don't know what you want. I mean, point is, they destroyed the anti-Mason party. The Whig party folded. They became the Republican Party. And so when people talk about parties switching, this is the first switch. This is the first switch from the Democrats to the Republicans, really. And then the second one is in World War II, just about right after this. But Johnson was not a bad president in a lot of ways. He tried to stop the Emancipation Proclamation, and he tried to stop the first 13th Amendment, because he pointed out that the Emancipation Proclamation didn't actually free slaves. It only freed slaves in rebelling states and had perimeters for it. So imagine the slaves that were in areas that found out that the Emancipation Proclamation didn't save them, because it was clearly defined by fat cat moneymakers who were trying to make sure that the slaves weren't saved. And also the idea that the 13th Amendment, when you read it, it doesn't actually free anybody. It says everyone is subject to the same obligations. And he's like, whoa, this is going to remove the rights of all American citizens. We need to rewrite this to include the rights that say everyone is given rights, or is respected.
Unalienable.
Yeah, we respect and do not disturb the rights of all citizens, something like that. And they were like, no, we're going to rush this through. You're the bad guy. So they built this entire system all in order to take away the rights of, and again, at the time, the South was the third largest economy in the world. And so they completely decimated that, and they took it over, and they made sure that it was a controlled asset, right?
Well,
interesting.
Okay, so you want to talk about the Golden Circle again, because we haven't really.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth. It's probably worth it. Do you want me to jump in? Do you have any things you want to say?
No, I just because I feel like we never really completely discussed it.
Yeah,
Right.
like were they knights in any other orders that start with knights in their name?
So yeah, so originally there's actually an older group that's like from Latin, and then it goes into Spanish, Circulo Dorado, which was the way the wiki points this out is always wrong, right? So that's the thing. So they're saying that a place where slavery would be legal. That's definitely not the fundamental point of this. What it is that you've got an elite group of families that have established themselves in this region, from Venezuela after Napoleon into Galveston and all across, the east of Mexico.
The golden triangle of trade, right?
Right. And so they're saying what we're going to do is we're going to build the most powerful empire in the world, and everyone else will have to trade with us, and we'll basically own them through economy. And we've already figured out how to do that, because if we own Barbados, we have all the Caribbean, we know how human trafficking works, but it's not necessarily because they want to own people per se, but there were some people that were owned. I mean, it's weird because they make the Knights of Golden Circle sound like
debts and different prisons and different ways that people would get into that situation of being put on a ship. And
it's just it's like if you were saying, like, if there's 4 glasses of mud and you ask, like, what's the difference between these glasses of mud? And then someone says, well, that glass has dirt in it. It doesn't really explain anything to me. You know what I mean? So they're all doing this at this time. The North has no law against it. The South has no law against it. They're working on it in the Confederacy, ironically. This is the other thing that people don't talk about, is the Confederacy was banning slavery, emancipated, gradual emancipation.
I think the goods that they're trading are important too, because you have sugar, you have rum, like this, the triangle.
So the South was actually, Jefferson Davis was talking about the gradual emancipation. He wanted all slaves born after 1900 to be free, and he was going to gradually emancipate everybody in the South. So the South was already working on emancipation before the North ever came up with the idea, which is very interesting. But they were trying to figure out how to do it.
The funny thing, because now that you mentioned the sugar trade that made England very rich, when we're talking about the movie star Cumberbatch, right? Doctor Strange, right? He's admitting to his family's estate. That was it in Barbados? I think that was one of the islands his family tapped into.
Probably Barbados is like.
Cane.
There's some interesting documentaries I saw recently on Barbados, and they were going through, and you can find all these records of human trafficking from the 1600s, where like people came through here, a certain amount of years, they're supposed to be owned by this person in this place. So all the ways that you can find, but the thing is, the way it's explained today versus then, it's like, here you've got lists of people who are valuable, they're valued, they're acknowledged. And then all of a sudden in the 18th century, you have these weird insurance companies, which are like, it's probably better if you just let these slaves die. And they start using slavery in order to kill tons of people, because they bring them from one area that they just want to empty out.
So they like buy the bad debt or something.
Right. And so this debt slavery becomes, it becomes this whole thing where you're
like
trading
in the same
back
way
and
a
forth,
company will buy our
own.
credit card debt. It's like, oh yeah, you've got all these prisoners essentially.
Or
I'll buy your bad prisoners.
Or the way that a state buys,
stock,
the way a state
option.
buys,
Right.
the way banks buy state debt for debt. So let's say you're Bolivia and you trade 90 years of income tax as opposed to, one lifetime of a million people or something like that. So we've literally figured out ways of fracturing the debt into pieces, so a person can be a slave and live at home, and it's far more economical that way, because then you don't have to take care of the slave, you don't have to pay for in fact they pay you to live where they do. right?
Well,
And that's right back to serfdom.
There's some other interesting thing as far as the infrastructure goes in some of these places too. So like Puerto Rico, for example, in San Juan, all of the streets that are still there, they were brought there by, I think, mainly the Spanish, but I think some French ships too were coming there, and they would be empty ships until they got there. And so the bricks that became the cobblestone streets, those were to balance off the ships so they wouldn't have to retie everything and redo the ballasts. So those were what they call ballasts that would like weigh down the ship. All those like stones.
Right.
Then from there they unload that and they're filling it with sugar and rum and people and spices and and so like you have all these different companies of like essentially merchant marines, right?
Right. I mean, so these, and that's the thing. Like, I saw a ship actually in Venezuela, and how they bring it into the deck and dock it, and it's just crazy the way they have to use bricks in order to push it off the wharf. But I was going to say, with the Knights of the Golden Circle, what they did was they realized that every state was becoming an independent state that wanted to have its own autonomy and work together. And so the United States used to work this way. And in the South, you have the Bolivians, the Simon Bolivar. Not just the country Bolivia, the ideology of Simon Bolivar. Bolivarian is what Venezuela's socialism is based on. It's not based on Marx. It's based on this guy, Simon Bolivar. And the way that they were trying to build their culture was kind of independent of Spain, self-determinate, self-sovereign. These are the same idea. In fact, if you go to Washington, D.C., you go to Maryland today, you'll find areas named after Bolivar. Right, because we respected each other at that point, and the Knights of the Golden Circle were trying to liberate other parts of South America as well. So they were saying, "Hey, what we're going to do is we're going to build and continue to build the thing that we were always planning on building: the United States of, and where is this? The Americas." Right, and then these
Puerto
states,
Rico still isn't like an actual state.
Right,
like,
right.
What like that's so messed up.
Puerto Rico. The Philippines at the time, right? The Philippines were stolen, the banana republics. So this is the alternative, right? So here's what happens. The Knights of the Golden Circle are saying, we're going to make sure that all of these states are confederated so that no one controls any other state, but each state can work together in order to defend the self-determination, and everything should only be up from there, right? And then simultaneously, Lincoln's saying, we should probably kill everybody who's working against us. Let me see if I can find my Lincoln picture. And we should arrest people that are polluting ballot boxes with other people's names than my own. Like, I'm freaking Saddam Hussein. And I'm sorry, because I don't even know if Saddam Hussein did that. That might just be some propaganda. Maybe Saddam Hussein was a good guy. But Abraham Lincoln, definitely not. And if you tried to mess with this, he would arrest you. You would disappear like it was Guantanamo Bay. There's no reason to arrest you. They could do it. They could just, whatever they wanted. So then they start taking over other countries with the Monroe Doctrine. And you've got Puerto Rico, you got the Philippines, you've got the United States as this America, where it's one government out of DC that controls the rest of the states. Nobody's in charge anymore. They're all, regional under the emperor. And this is the end of the United States of America. And this is the beginning of the U.S. And Uncle Sam.